All right, let's do this. Zab, you ready? Grey Wolf, you there?
Rock and roll.
Oh yeah, ready to go.
Okay, great. Let's get this started. So, hey, this is Ahawk from Haven. We wanted to do this today to just go over the community tokenomics proposal that we've all been talking about for the last couple days, and that was approved today by a community vote. Run through both sort of how that came together and the process for that proposal, what's in it, when it's all going to be deployed, and then sort of what's next and everything else that we're all working on at the moment. So I'll start with a little background on how the proposal came together, and then I'll run through just sort of a quick summary, and then I'll let Zab, Grey Wolf, Klein, anybody else who's been close to this process chat and make sure that I didn't miss anything, and then we can open up to questions, and anybody that's here is welcome to request to speak, and we'll try and get a discussion going at the end of this too. So first on the proposal. So I think a little history is important here just to know how it all came together. If everybody remembers, we relaunched the protocol on what was it, November 18th, 15th, mid-November, after having conversions on pause since late June, early July, after the exploits that happened this summer. So protocol went through this huge overhaul, which included the creation of a new validation proof for the mint and burn process, that was audited and tested and everything, and finally deployed in November. So that was sort of the first milestone that got us to making sure that we had a secure protocol that was back online, and you could go back and forth between XHV and xUSD and all the X assets. And after that happened, I think both the team, the community, sort of everybody at almost the same time, sort of restarted discussions about what Haven's tokenomics looks like. And when we use the word tokenomics, it's probably a little confusing. I mean, that can mean a lot of things. I think broadly it could mean everything from how the mint and burn protocol itself works, to things like lock times and fees and other things that sort of dictate how the assets are minted on chain and the restrictions and rules placed around that process. So when that discussion happened shortly after Haven 2.0 launched, I think it became clear that there were some things we could potentially do in the short term, that could get rolled out in the course of weeks, if not a month or so, that could probably dramatically improve the functioning of the protocol. And then there was some category of some other things that might take longer development, longer discussion, but we're still worth thinking about. So the team and sort of a core group of longtime contributors formed a working group, and really, this was really driven by the community. And I mean, the team, as it were participated, but in many ways we're bystanders to this conversation because it was really community driven, and really appreciate everybody that did pitch in to sort of give us feedback and ideas and discuss this stuff. And so that working group sort of put together a proposal of 4 broad categories of things that we could do in the next couple of weeks to improve tokenomics, and submitted that proposal to the community last week, and have been taking feedback, and we finished the vote earlier today. So with that, I'll pause right there on sort of process and how the proposal came together before we get into the meat of the proposal. And if anybody wants to add anything, Grey Wolf or Klein or Zab or anyone else, about the process, let's talk about it now, and then we can get into the details.
One quick thing. I've tried inviting Klein to speak a couple times already. He was mentioning in Discord he was having an issue.
Okay.
Hawk, you want to try and do that? Because I don't know.
Yeah,
if maybe
I did once already. I'll invite him one more time. We'll see what happens. He's refusing. That's what I think. It's a dodge.
Smart man.
Yeah, smart. Grey Wolf, did I miss anything about the process? I think you, aside from Klein, you may be the only other member of the working group that's on right now.
No real points were missed. as far as the process, it was just very, very much a very broad back and forth between all the, parties that were long-term contributors. So the proposal definitely came from a place of just wanting to improve the protocol and really see the best for it in terms of its long-term performance.
Yep. And I think, we've said this a few times, but it's worth reiterating that the stuff that was voted on today and is going to get deployed over the next couple of weeks is just a next step. It's an iteration that we think is really going to improve a number of things in the protocol, but it's not, the final say about how both the protocol or the ecosystem of Haven is going to work over the long term. And I think, safe to say we're open to the feedback on all these other sort of longer term topics that weren't covered in the proposal.
Yeah, it's really key that the community understands that, the team and all the contributors are very focused on incremental growth as opposed to like making sudden changes that may interrupt processes. So, in my opinion, I feel like the process is being taken in the safe over sorry approach, which is always the best way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because I think there were a number of things that we all discussed as a group, and some of them were pretty radical and would have changed probably the core functions of the protocol. I think everybody agreed they were worth thinking about, but both because of sort of the development work that would take to do them, which is lengthy, and the discussion that would be needed to sort of determine if it was the best course would also take a lot of time. So the proposal really reflects the sort of faster, easier steps that we could take right now as we think about some of the longer term issues too. So that became clear pretty quick with the group. All right, let me jump into the proposal real fast, and then we can get to a discussion. Nobody wants to hear me talk anymore. I think everybody's probably familiar with it, but there's four things that the community voted on, that was proposed and that the community voted on and approved today. They are changing the unlock times for XHV and xUSD to an asymmetric model, streamlining the conversion fees, eliminating the delta advantage between the spot and MA price for XHV, and implementing a new feature that would unlock the change from each conversion transaction in the standard 10 blocks, 20 minutes unlock, rather than having all the change in each transaction also get locked up for the lock period, which was something that we've probably talked about for, months, if not longer, and has been something most people have been asking for a while. So we're glad to have that on the list. So real quick on each of those, I think the lock times is probably the biggest change. Well, the lock times and the delta advantage are the two biggest changes, and probably have the most impact. So right now, if you're not familiar with Haven, most of you probably are, but if you're not, when you convert XHV to the private stablecoin xUSD, you have four different options that come with a different set of fees for each, based on how fast your xUSD is unlocked. And the reason these were put in place at the beginning of the project was really to disincentivize and prevent manipulation of the infinite liquidity in the vault, and the relationship between conversions and XHV's price on exchanges. And we wanted to make sure that there was some kind of lock period to guard against somebody trying to do hyper quick manipulations and mint and burn the protocol to the ground. And those, the default is 7 days. Your xUSD is locked for 7 days. And then there was 48 hours, 6 hours, and I'm screwing up the fourth one because I don't have it in front of me. But essentially, the working group all agreed that those priority unlock times and the associated fees were really only being used, primarily the 48-hour unlock, were really only being used by people that were sort of actively trading in the vault, and using it to either arb or trade, and that most people use the default lock period, and there wasn't really a need to have a big complicated set of priority options, because they were really only there to be used. They were really only being used in practice by people that were trying to arb and trade. So the group decided on, let's have one unlock period for xUSD after you mint it, and one unlock period for XHV when you're going back from xUSD to XHV. And so the group settled on, this asymmetric model, which right now, if the default lock period is 7 days. So you mint xUSD and it's unlocked in 7 days. And then when you want to go back into XHV, that's also locked for 7 days, and it's symmetrical. So the group decided that an asymmetrical model where you have a longer lock period for the xUSD and a much, much shorter unlock period for the XHV when you come onshore would discourage use of the vault solely as a trading mechanism and help encourage a more stable peg of xUSD on external markets. So that's the biggest change. I think that there was plenty of discussion about the length of the unlock period and whether or not it should be 21 days or 14 days or 60 days or something longer, or crazier, or shorter. And we settled on 21. We presented the option of 14 to the community, and for the most part, I think everybody supported the 21 days. I do think the biggest change there, while the unlock for xUSD is longer at 21 days, I think the more impactful change is the short onshore from xUSD to XHV being 12 hours. That's essentially going to allow you to take advantage of ARB opportunities for xUSD on exchanges and be able to mint back to XHV pretty quickly, which should help encourage trading in the exchanges instead of in the vault, and ARBing xUSD to keep it closer to its peg. So that's the biggest one. The second biggest one is removing the delta advantage, and I think this has been probably called 100 different things, including delta burn, which was a little confusing. But the basic premise is, if you're not familiar with Haven, it uses a 24-hour moving average of the XHV price as reported by Chainlink to give you a price to convert xUSD in the Haven vault. Again, this is done to prevent manipulation and flash crashes and black swan events. And the problem that became evident over both earlier last year and certainly as we examine what the protocol is going to look like in the future is that it really gave anybody sort of a window into the future to see what XHV price was going to do, whether it was going to go up or down, and give them an advantage, essentially a risk-free advantage in the vault to trade against it. And over time, I think it became clear to everybody that wasn't sustainable and probably something that wasn't going to benefit the protocol long term. So essentially, the proposal said we're still going to have the 24-hour moving average in place. It's still important to guard against manipulation attempts, especially when XHV has low liquidity, and against black swan events. But when you go to convert XHV to xUSD in the vault, you're essentially going to get the spot price, and you're not going to be able to take advantage of that delta between the spot and the moving average. So I think that's clearly over the last year, the existence of that delta has created additional inflation in the XHV supply that is purely from sort of the risk-free trades that people have been able to make. And it's not something that the working group or the community at large thinks should be part of the protocol moving forward. So those are the two biggest changes. Fees streamlined to a 0.5% for all conversions because we're getting rid of the other priority options and the higher fees. So all conversions now in Haven will have a 0.5% conversion fee that includes all the other X assets like XBTC. So I'm going to stop talking and shut up and let anybody else who was either part of the working group or has been close to this comment. Feel free to raise your hand, jump in, tell me what I missed, what I'm explaining wrong. Fire away.
I've been talking to Klein for like a year and a half on Discord, and I can't wait to hear what he sounds like. I'm guessing it's like Mike Tyson or something like that.
That's your cue, Klein. Fire away.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
Excellent. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Wow, I love the accent.
British. So yeah, good to be here and finally meet you all in almost in person. One day we'll be able to see each other.
Indeed.
So Klein, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what you kind of what it was like being in the working group, maybe some of the ideas that you had, just kind of your experience with that.
Let me just cut down the feedback I'm getting. Hang on. Okay, sorry. I'm recording on laptop as well, so I'm getting a feedback because I'm using
thanks for doing
both.
that. No worries.
Sorry. So can you please repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, we were just thinking if you could. I mean, you were a part of the working group that came up with the proposal and sort of shared it, the rationale behind it with the community. Just give your thoughts real quick on both that process, what's in the proposal, and what you see as the next steps, either for the working group or the community at large.
Okay, I mean, the proposal started with us looking at the initial problem of inflation and how easy it was to not just to manipulate the price, but to also play the game of onshoring and offshoring using the MA advantage. So that was the initial sort of stage. And it's been obvious for a long time that the MA advantage gave everyone an opportunity to play along, not just the whales. So that was the first thing that we needed to get rid of. And after that, it was just a question of whether we're going to change the on and offshore lock times and how we're going to do that. And there's been, we spent hours discussing what the best thing to do is in the short space of time that we've got before the fork. And I think we just decided to do it really simply, to just have one lock time for each way, and also reduce the fees and make it simple across the board. Yeah, I mean, from then on, it was straightforward. And then we decided to, after the fork, we're going to have an in-depth discussion on how to actually make it more robust for long term. That's kind of that's how it started, really.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe could you speak real quick to sort of the why we viewed the need, I mean, why the group all viewed the need for an asymmetric model versus something that was equal on both sides. I think there was plenty of debate both within the group and in the community about what the time should be and the length and everything. But I think there was pretty general agreement that there should be a longer offshore and a much shorter onshore.
Yes, I mean, the other thing that dawned on us is that we need to make it easy to either get into the system or to get out of the system. And we then had debates around what would be the best option. And I actually preferred to get into the system quicker than get out. So for me personally, at the beginning, it was have a shorter offshore and a longer onshore. But there were pretty good arguments against that. For example, people would be feeling trapped if they come into the system quickly and then they can't leave. It would probably create a negative sort of sentiment. So that's what really changed my mind on that. And I think we all pretty much agreed that a longer offshore with a shorter onshore would be probably the best, because you can still buy xUSD on exchanges and have the luxury of getting into the system fairly quickly, and then also buy X assets on top of that.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I think the thing that was useful for me, I mean, sometimes these discussions can be an echo chamber, and we've certainly been guilty of an echo chamber where we're not really sort of trying to think outside the box. And the community group that came together was great, in part because it disagreed on a lot of things, but found a way to disagree while also being productive and trying to find some consensus on things. So I think this idea of an asymmetric lock period was one where there was a ton of debate about exactly how long and how it should be structured, but eventually a lot of different people were able to come to the consensus that this is the balance that would be best, at least in the short term, while we think about what everything should look like for the long term.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say, Matt created a very good spreadsheet showing the numbers and the quantities of onshore and offshores, And from there, it was quite obvious what whales were using. And that's what gave us the idea on the exact time. So we knew that the usual turnaround would be between 9 and 14 days. And we were thinking that we should really
Right.
increase that a little bit to slow down the amount of the round trip effectively.
Right. Yeah. Round trip ended up becoming sort of the theme, right? We needed to reduce the overall length of time that somebody would have to go from XHV to xUSD back to XHV, to disincentivize somebody from manipulating the price of XHV on an exchange. And the data was really clear, right? Like the vast majority of large trades were done in 9 days, 2 days offshore and 7 days onshore.
Yeah, and just to jump in real quick, I think it's really key that people understand that, these changes came from a data-driven place. So that was really where things became most apparent, was, diving into the data and seeing that there were just consistently used time periods that the whales were taking advantage of. And so that was really kind of the lowest hanging fruit.
Yep, absolutely.
I think from an end user perspective, can you guys hear me? I think I just hit a button.
Yeah, you're there.
Yeah. So I think from an end user perspective, not from, I guess from a whales perspective, there was always the people that were complaining about in regards to the onshore of, selecting your price to onshore at, and then all of a sudden 7 days later, the price of Haven is not where you thought it was going to be. So I think that was a welcome feature from the community to hear about the 12-hour onshores versus 2 days, 5 days, whatever the heck it was, 7 days. I think that was a big deal. And you obviously can't go 12 off, 12 on. You can't match it up symmetrically that way. But I think that was a big win for the average end user of having that 12-hour onshore, because it does allow you to get back out of the x-axis ecosystem and hopefully in a range that you thought you were going to be getting back at in the first place when you press that button.
Yep, that's a good point. And just to clarify too, from the team and the dev side, I mean, I think the other limiting factor for the group's discussion and the proposal that was eventually put forward was, what could we do in the matter of a couple weeks or a month or something, not 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, that could be deployed pretty quickly and securely. And I think all of these changes, I mean, most of them, from what I understand from the dev team, have already been coded and essentially written up, and we should have a build next week for everybody to test, if not sooner. They're pretty straightforward changes, right? Changing the lock time is changing a number. Removing the delta advantage is essentially, it's not changing anything in the transaction construction. It's changing the price that the conversion is given in the vault. So that's a pretty straightforward change. The fees are pretty straightforward, and actually maybe the most complicated task was the change on lock feature, and lots of people have sort of looked at this, and my understanding is Niak is already pretty much done with it. He may have already committed the first part of it, if I am not mistaken. So that was the other thing, right? We didn't want to go into a process that required 6 months of trying to do a huge development lift. As Grey Wolf said, let's do the low hanging fruit and then move forward. All right. Unless Zab or Grey Wolf or Klein, unless you guys have anything else to add, maybe we can open it up for questions and discussion.
Yeah,
I think we're good.
I was just going to say as the last point that, now that this low-hanging fruit's been taken care of, it's really time for, the outer community to begin suggesting things for, the longer future, so they can start being kind of covered and mapped out towards, a roadmap.
Yep, I'd agree with that. And I think I'd also say the discussion that at least we've had in Discord and on Telegram over the last week or so after the proposal came out was really helpful. I mean, we've had a ton of different ideas, some really interesting, some I don't understand, some that will never work, but some that should be talked about. And I think that kind of discussion is something we need to do quickly. And I think there's a bunch of good ideas out there that could be refined into something that could be really useful long term. So I'd encourage everybody to keep that discussion going. And there's a good place in Discord to do it, but we're open to any ideas at this point, and I think everybody recognizes that there's plenty of other opportunities to improve the network, the protocol, the ecosystem over the long term. Cool. All right, I'll open it up to some questions. If you want to ask a question, just request to be a speaker, and I'll try and not like kick you out and actually make this work. So just request to be a speaker and we'll get you started. Let's see, first one. Hutna, hold on. You should be able to speak now, or shortly, or soon. Are you there? Your mic might be muted. Looks like you are a speaker now, but you might be muted. Hey there, can hear you.
Yeah, yep. Perfect. So yeah, I fully agree with the proposal that's just happened, and I'm glad it's worked out the way it has. I'm not sure who said it, but someone mentioned about putting out to the outer community on what they'd like coming next. I would just want to know what the devs team and your guys' opinions are on what you want to see next, and is it going to pick up on the roadmap from just before the hack, like 6 months ago? Thank you.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good question. You know, my answer, and this might sound like a dodge, but it really isn't. My answer is I think the team is in all agreement that we want to do what the community wants to do. And I know it's kind of a feedback loop, but there's, you know, the biggest request from, I think, the community, and something that we all agree is needed, is building out the xUSD ecosystem and the utility for xUSD and X assets. And there's a bunch of different things that could be done to build that out, right? It's listing xUSD in different places. It's creating opportunities to do DeFi-like applications for xUSD. I think that has been identified as a top priority and something that we all agree should be a priority. So it's the THORChain integration. It's, you know, getting added to Cake Wallet and having other ways to send and transact with xUSD. I mean, those are the two things that we're working on. Probably the most. That's probably the most intensive work right now. But we're open to those other ideas. So I think it's really focusing on how you build out an ecosystem so you can attract more people to actually be using Haven, be using the X assets, and understand sort of why Haven is so unique, because you have a private ecosystem that doesn't exist anywhere else. So we're definitely, you know, listening to the community, and we want to be guided by the priorities that the community has set out, and that's probably those are probably the first couple priorities. Hold on, let's see. Zab, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's important to note that, you know, in the Discord channels, in that tokenomics channel, I just want to say that it was really important for everybody, if they've got an opinion or an idea about something, to not feel shy and to go in there and actually voice that opinion. I think it's been a major help in the ideas channel, in the tokenomics channel, really just anywhere throughout there, because, you know, somebody's idea, which may sound a little bit crazy to others, because we know the attitudes and personalities in there, that could eventually spark the idea for something else that brings about great change. So I think it's really important for everybody in the community, literally everybody, to try and make their voices heard.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, since we launched Haven 2.0 in November, and really sort of got past the awful summer that we all lived through, I think we're as confident as we've ever been in the strength and security of the protocol itself. And now it's all about how do you optimize the protocol so that people can use it, and so that people have access to a private stablecoin and can transact with it and can engage with it in other sort of DeFi spaces. And there's a bunch of different ideas in that space, and it's probably our job to help distill all these ideas down into some priorities. And right now we have THORChains. Obviously, that integration is a top priority and something that the dev team works on every single day. and there's probably lots of others too. So we all suggestions are welcome, and I think they'll be well received by the team, the community. Let's see. I think there's one or two more questions. Hold on. Lavezzi, you should be added as a speaker. Can you hear us? Can we hear you? Are you there?
It's me.
Hey, yeah, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. I just have this question that I did ask the last time about Heaven with Ledger. I was asking
Right.
if you guys are going to prioritize working with Ledger or X, or having holders being able to use Ledger with XVR.
Yep. Yeah, good question. It is something that we have continued to talk about. I know a couple of the devs have circled back on how next to approach our application to Ledger, and I think are working on possibly getting the help of a third party to assist us with that. But again, that is something I'm not entirely sure what the timeline looks like, but it's at the top of mind for everybody in our community. I know it's a priority for most people. It is for me, certainly personally. But the process has been slowed by both all the distractions and work we've had for the last couple of months and Ledger's process for getting an application in and approved. So I do think the wheels are turning, but we'll need to get back and figure out exactly what the timeline looks like.
Okay, but will it be anything this year or maybe?
I hope so. Yeah, that would certainly be the goal. I don't think it's something that is going to be an impossible task it's absolutely possible, and we need to probably put some manpower and resources behind finishing whatever's required of the application to get it approved. So yeah, I would hope so. I'd hope that it's sooner rather than later. I'm full of hope.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Douglas, I think you should be added as a speaker.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Sorry for
Good. How
getting
are
here.
you?
Well,
No, we
good.
gotcha.
So awesome. So Doug Tuman, I run the Monero Talk podcast, YouTube show, the Monero
Awesome.
Topia
Great.
show. Been following you guys from a distance, but to be honest, never really dived in deep. I guess I'm kind of a Monero maxi and just hesitant of other coins, but really interested in what you guys are trying to do. In theory, sounds amazing. Sounds like something that I would personally love to use. If we could get to the point where it's, where we can trust the tech enough. So kudos to you guys for experimenting with this and forging ahead. Really excited to see what you can do. And I just wanted to put two things out there. Number one, would love to eventually have you guys on the show if you're ever interested in doing that. We could, dive deeper down the rabbit hole and expose you guys further to the Monero community. And number two, would love to, have you guys potentially attend the conference that we're throwing in Miami. And, maybe somebody come down and be a speaker and give a presentation on Haven and where you guys are currently at. I think it would just be a good way to get the tech out in front of the Monero community. And obviously a lot of people in Monero are already familiar with it, but I think it'd be a nice way to work with the Monero community and also just meet people in person and socialize, and maybe, new things can come from that. So just throwing those two things out there, coming on the show potentially, and even more importantly, trying to get you guys involved in the in-person conference that we're throwing in Miami in April.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. No, really appreciate it. Would love to do the podcast sometime. So I'll get in touch with you offline, and maybe we can figure out a time, or certainly some topics that would be useful for you and for your listeners. Would love to do that. Same for the conference too. Let me go back and figure out who's available and willing to do stuff in person, but we'd love to. And I think that's part of our challenge too, right? We all feel like we've built something pretty innovative thanks to all the hard work that Monero's done over the years. And we're excited to share it and talk about it and show people how to use it and how it works. But the reality is, we're super tiny, and there's not a lot of people that know about the project, much less understand how it works or understand why Monero and private by default chains are important. So we're all for getting the word out on all those topics and appreciate the offers too. So thank you.
And it can't really be
Awesome.
overstated enough that Haven is very, very thankful to Monero for all the work that they've done that kind of led to even being able to facilitate this type of system. So,
No doubt.
As much as a lot of the users are Haven maxis, they all remember where it's, coming from and the base tech and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say there's certainly that old adage, there's a lot more that unites us than divides us, and especially with these two projects, I see them working very well together potentially down the road. Haven being living up to its name and just being a way for those that use Monero to jump into another crypto anonymously and privately and stably store their wealth for when they want to do it. There's really no other way to do that right now, and so I think it's kind of a match made in heaven if it could work out in the long run.
No doubt. And I would second what Grey Wolf said. I mean, I think there's plenty of folks that don't necessarily think that there's not room in the world for more good ideas, but the reality is Haven wouldn't be here without Monero, and I think we have an advantage of having been able to work with the Monero community and some of the devs themselves and actually spend time over the last couple of years learning Monero, which takes time, to build out Haven on Monero, which hasn't been done before, and build out a private stablecoin and an ecosystem on top of Monero, which draws from all the stuff that Monero has done and builds some really cool stuff on top of it. So they're not mutually exclusive at all, and we should be finding more ways to work together, for sure. So thanks, Doug.
Cool, man. Yeah, please reach out.
Will do. You'll be hearing from me soon for sure.
Doug, I just wanted to say I've heard some of your stuff before, and I'm pretty much a fan here. So it's pretty exciting to see you on here, and it's pretty awesome. What you're proposing. But just in general, guys, I actually got to run. Boss is wondering where the hell I'm at, so I got to skip out early today. So I'm going to get out of the car for once and actually go back in. Klein, awesome hearing your voice. Grey Wolf, Hawk as usual, and have fun. I'll see you guys in Discord.
Thanks, Ab. Talk soon.
Cheers, Ab.
Take care.
Let's see. I think we have another question from Dr. Burns. Dr. Burns, you should be added as a speaker now. Fire away.
Yo, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it
Haven
going?
Monero people. Nice to
How are you?
good. Nice to hear Douglas here in AHawk, right? That's you there at the Haven host.
Yes, sir.
Very cool. Been a big fan ever since I found out about Haven, actually not too long ago. I'm curious. So this simple fixture that you guys did, I wasn't here at the beginning of the talk, but so you made it so it takes longer to offshore into the X assets, and then it doesn't, and then the getting back onshore or getting your XHV back is only 12 hours. Is that the correction you guys made?
That's right.
So what does that really do? So what was the problem happening?
Yeah, I think the basic problem around the lock times, there's probably two of them. The first is that in the onshore process, right? So when you're going from xUSD back to XHV, in that scenario, let's say somebody's holding 1,000 xUSD, they would expect that when they convert back to XHV, they're getting somewhere pretty close to $1,000 worth of XHV.
Yeah, based on the market value at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So the problem with the lock periods that we had for onshores before was that it extended that window of time before your XHV was unlocked. And during that time, whether it was 7 days or 48 hours, the price of XHV could have shifted, potentially in a significant way, and your
Quick,
1,000 xUSD could have been worth a lot more or a lot
I
less, and
see.
that's a problem, right?
I
That's
see.
just
So once you did the moment when you hit onshore or you get your XHV back, you had to wait a while, but it was at the price that you hit the button.
correct. Yeah, the price at
I,
the time of the transaction. Yep.
yep. Okay. And that was
And
people complained about because they thought, oh, I should have been able to get my funds right away or sooner.
yeah, I think it's always been sort of a built-in issue that users have had to deal with. I mean, I think there's lots of trade-offs, and there's good reasons why those lock times were implemented at the beginning of the project. But I think now that we're,
Is the lock times really like, I don't know, that doesn't really look like a long-term type of solution. It seems like there's always going to be some sort of little way around that for people to figure out some.
yeah,
Oh.
it's definitely more of a stopgap solution than something that's going to overhaul the protocol.
Right.
I think one thing that's changed over the last year is that we do now have at least a couple markets, external markets for xUSD that allow, Trade Ogre and Polarity that allowed trading of xUSD to happen off of the, outside of the vault. So I think that does change the dynamic a little. And really the long offshore, the reason there, as I think Klein described earlier, was to increase the round trip that it would take somebody from going from XHV to xUSD back to XHV, given that XHV's liquidity is still pretty low, and it's clear that large holders have tried to use a shorter round trip, to potentially increase their holdings, thanks to the low liquidity on exchanges. So that was the reason for the long offshore.
It might correct itself just from more liquidity being in the market, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Liquidity is number one.
Yeah, I agree. Cool. Let's keep it strong. I love this whole project, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for the
See you
question.
guys. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Take care, man. Anybody else that has a question, comment, grievance, go down the list, fire away. I have a couple more minutes. If not, I will assume everybody's perfectly happy with everything and has no questions about anything, which is perfect. Lavezi, you're back, or you should be back. Are you there?
Should I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
As a Heaven enthusiast, what is required of us to make sure that Heaven really get the recognition it deserves and to fire the project to the wall? Like, what is required for like the Heaven fans to make sure that the project is very well run and everything is going smoothly?
Yeah, I think a good question. We're only as strong as our community right now. I think our success has been mostly because of word of mouth and a growing group of people that actually use the protocol, value privacy in crypto, care about this space. Maybe they came from the Monero community or they're part of the Monero community. They're interested in what Haven's building. So I think in whatever way you're able to get active with our community, whether that's on social media or doing stuff on YouTube or Twitter, or actually just telling people and telling your friends, that's one way to do it. We could certainly use connections to other developers in the Monero space that might be able to help us build out some of the things that we have planned. So dev work is always welcomed. And I mean, anything that you can offer that would expand the reach of Haven and the ability for people to even know that it exists, or B, contribute directly to the things that we're developing or working on or trying to fund. We're open to any and all ideas. So whatever way you're able to get involved, I guarantee it'll be useful long term for the project.
What about funding? Is it allowed for enthusiasts or people who like having to maybe fund or have fun to have more developers and stuff like that? Is there a
Yeah, I
fund?
mean, there's not really a structured way at the moment. I think we're working on some ideas about how we, decentralize and plan out the funding for some of the things that have been proposed. And we have a bug bounty program that is pretty substantial, that has been working in terms of allowing developers to come with us with things that they've found. But I would encourage you to jump on Discord and talk to us about any of the other sort of external ideas that about funding and things that actually require some resources, because I think we'd be open to talking about them.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see, I have two more questions. Double Standard, you should be there. And Arnie Vanderhaven, you should be there. Fire away. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. You might be muted.
Is that me? It's my turn, right?
Hey, yeah, there you go. I can hear you.
Hi. Thank you for giving me this time. So yeah, I'm just gonna go straight up to the future application and the activities you guys are doing. So I'm not a technical. I'm not into coding. I'm from a completely different field. But I was just curious, in practical terms, about the THORChain integration. So what does it mean? I mean, practically. So what you guys need to do, and I mean a bit of an explanation of this kind of work, because I couldn't find much detail on this, and I'm very curious to know what is it about.
Sure. Good question. So on THORChain, I think, I'm not a developer either, but from what I've learned from our dev team is that the integration of crypto note chains on THORChain is a lot more complex than anybody really anticipated, both from our side and their side. I think the good news is we did a ton of work sort of last summer before the attack. It was all sort of put on pause until about 2 months ago. And the work we've done in the last 2 months has updated our client, our THORChain client, that would be a Haven client, and updated to the latest THORChain code. We've done a ton of work in sort of creating the what will eventually become the pull request that has to be submitted to THORChain, so that they can receive it and put it on their StageNet for testing, or their testnet and StageNet. And right now, I mean, we have our devs have a pretty full working testing environment that allows you to send and receive Haven assets from a THORChain pool in a testnet environment, and be able to provide liquidity with Haven assets in a THORChain pool. So it is really coming along. I think there are some final pieces that are proving a lot harder to solve than everybody thought. But the thing that encourages me is that the THORChain team has been incredible, and they have a big team, but a bunch of people that are really committed to integrating CryptoNote coins, Monero, and Haven onto THORChain, and they've been giving us all the help and feedback and assistance we could ask for. So that's been really encouraging. I think there's some final pieces related to how all these wallets are going to interact with each other that have to get ironed out, but it's something that our guys are working on pretty much every single day, and I'm confident that it will get resolved in a way that allows us to present an integration to THORChain that is going to work for Haven, which is what we all want. So I think we're getting there, but I don't want to put timelines on it, because it is really hard work, and it's new, and it's innovative, and it hasn't been done before. But we're making progress is the short version.
Thank you very much. That's very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
And keep on with the good work. Full support from me, from the little I can give, let's say.
Hey, will do. No, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers.
Arnie, did you have a question? We probably have time for like one more, and then I have to jump. But
Yeah, hi. First of all, I also would like to address Kleinroy for helping me when my funds were stuck on KuCoin.
Ah, great.
Really,
He's
really
the
helpful for
support
me.
wizard.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I was wondering, I only converted XHV to xUSD in the past. I waited 7 days or something like that. But what is it? Would it be possible to implement converting XHV to an XHV asset or an X asset like XBTC
Right.
in the future? Because
Yep.
first now you have to wait 21 days before you can convert to xUSD, and then only then you can convert in the full to like a BTC X asset.
Right.
Why is there no straight way to do this? Or it
Yep.
would be really interesting to say.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's so two separate things. I mean, the first one is, would there be a way in the future to go directly from XHV to an X asset that is not XUSD, like you said, XBTC
Yeah,
or
exactly.
X gold or X silver or something? And I mean, the short answer is the protocol was designed, the mint and burn part of the protocol was designed at the beginning to create a gateway between XUSD and X assets and have XHV and XUSD be a separate gateway. And the practical answer, from my understanding, is that there's no opposition to creating a way for you to exchange XHV directly to an X asset. None that I can think of. I could be wrong. But I don't think there's an opposition to the idea. I think there's a ton of work that would have to go into overhauling how mint and burn works for that to happen. And I don't really have a sense of the scale of that work and how long it would take and what it would require and everything. But I don't think you're the only one asking that question, which is the good news. I think there's a lot of people interested in how you expand access to X assets, given that we're going to have longer offshore times for xUSD. I mean, one way is that you can just buy xUSD on an exchange and convert it into an X asset pretty quickly, but that requires you to use an exchange, and that's a whole separate conversation. So it's worth thinking about, I think.
Okay. I'm glad with your answer. I hope to see the changes made soon, and I hope that the confidence in the project grows again, because it's really sad to see the downward trend all this time.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that's why we're all here, is to continue building confidence and trust in the project and get it to a place where a lot more people are able to use it and interact with the network. Thanks for the question.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to ask one question before you go.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any like, for example, somebody wants to buy a large amount of XHV, and their only alternative is to go to over the counter exchange. Is there any way that someone can buy a large amount of tokens from centralized, how to call it, from a centralized or decentralized exchange?
Yeah, I mean, I think the limitation that we have right now is you're only able to buy XHV on the exchanges where it's listed, right? So TradeOgre and KuCoin and Bittrex and a few others, and I think combined against all those exchanges, we probably do anywhere from several $100,000 to a couple $1 million in volume every day. So there's a way to get your hands on a pretty sizable amount of XHV if you want to. But to your point, that they're pretty low liquidity. I think they're those exchanges do a ton of volume, and anybody that's interested in accumulating is able to, for the most part. But I think that speaks to why we should continue to build out the decentralized exchange options. Polarity's the most recent example, and I think a great example of how it can work. THORChain is another one that has the pooling concept that would potentially allow for larger transactions as well. But yeah, right now you're limited by the exchanges we're on and the supply that's in the order books on exchanges, and that's really we need to build out all those options in the future too. Grey Wolf, you can go ahead. Did you want to say something? Oh, I think I had to re-add you. Hold on. Should be able to speak now. Are you there?
Yep, I'm back.
Okay. Did you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to jump in and say that, there is quite a large amount of liquidity floating around the 3 or 4 exchange pairs. So, for example, in a given day between like Polarity and Trade Ogre, I've seen at least like 1 million get settled, and the person was even able to get the xUSD at a discount too. So I would say that the liquidity provisioning is getting much better for Haven each day that goes by. And I think that the proposal coming up is really going to strengthen the position of xUSD and how stable it is.
That's a good point too. Like the growth of xUSD markets is just another entry point for the Haven ecosystem. So you might be buying xUSD to have a USD amount of your portfolio, or you may be buying xUSD to get Haven XHV at a discount, right? So the more that we can grow xUSD markets, just provides another avenue for people who are looking to get into the ecosystem, for sure. All right, guys, I apologize. I have to run. Thank you to everybody that joined and helped out and listened and asked questions. We'll keep doing these. Again, the proposal was approved today. Hopefully, we're going to be in testing on it next week and get it deployed. I'm hoping no later than the first week of February, sooner if we can, of course, but we need to test this stuff before it gets put out on the mainnet. So stop by the Discord, follow our blog on havenprotocol.org, follow the Twitter account. We'll continue to let you guys know what's going on, and stop by, ask questions, and we'll hopefully do more of these too in the future. So thanks to everybody.
Thanks all from me too.
All right. Take care, guys.
Thanks for hosting. Have a great one, everyone.
All right. See ya.
See you in the Discord.
Bye.